You very kindly shared my article about this.
Mhm.
The woke students, the last people you would have expected to be the cavalry for speech, all of a sudden took the side of the Palestinians. They actually, remarkably, took seriously what they've been told for at least the last 10 years by all these academics, that it's not right to back a colonial project that is aimed at the genocidal destruction of a group of marginalized brown people. But that's a real problem for these universities that get a lot of money from the Defense Department.
Well, right, yeah, no, and yeah, and it is at least hopeful, right, that they're sticking to their principles enough that they're going to, and they're going to end up protesting the restrictions that have been placed on them to speak out, right? And the formulations that have been made, like in this very slapdash way, almost overnight. Oh well, this is it's terrorism. It's celebrating terrorist violence. It's harm. Watching conservatives invoke harm has been comical,
Right.
but they've done it. But I just wonder how lasting a commitment to those values you're going to get from that crowd. I mean, you're absolutely right, Russell, and you're correct to point it out. But I don't know. What do you think? I mean, do you think that they're going to see things the same way with other issues? That's what I worry about.
The question is really whether this is a red pill moment for them, whether they realize from the pushback they're getting, as so many of us, I know for me personally, the Bernie Sanders was such a red pill moment for me because of the pushback the campaign got. That was what made me realize that everything the institutions I had trusted believed was total bullshit. Everything
Exactly.
they told me they
Right.
were
It
was
wasn't
bullshit.
just that they had it in for Bernie, it's that everything they said was full of shit, as indicated by their response to the threat of a Democratic Socialist winning the nomination, right?
Right. So now that they see that everything they've been told by these institutions that supposedly cared so much about marginalized identities and colonization, as long as you're talking about people who have been dead for 150 years, they cared a lot.
Right.
But
Yeah. Exactly. If it interferes with any Carlyle Group contracts, or the Lockheed Martin or anybody else who's funding the new science center, uh,
Right.
you know, and that's the thing. A lot of these kids are 19 years old. They have no idea how shit works.
right.
It takes a while to learn how all the money flows work, and why it is that you're a professor who's saying one thing today will say something else tomorrow, because the grant's going to be on the line now. Um, they're going to learn all this stuff in high speed, and hopefully that will teach them that behind all the rhetoric they've been getting for a while are these institutions, and these institutions are what matter. And this has been a frustration of mine just with reporting in general in America. Like they always try to distract people with personalities and hot takes on politics, whereas the thing that you always got to focus on is which institutions are behind what, because they're the ones that are lasting. They have the lasting impact on the situation, and that's what's been so scary about this story. Is that in addition to all the war on terror stuff that we saw before, like the extraordinary rendition, like the secret prison complexes, this new project, is global in scope. It involves all the same groups, the same military and intelligence partnerships, and now they want to, have absolute dominion over what kinds of topics and narratives are going to be seen by the entire world. I mean, that's a really radical, terrifying thing to countenance, and I guess you have to realize that it's a bridge. It's a long bridge to cross for some people. It takes a while for them to get there, but this is probably an introductory moment for some of those folks. You're right.
Yeah, and the truth of it is kind of hidden in plain sight. I mean, I always recognized it. I mean, I didn't spend much time in college, but I could see going in that academia is not a bludgeon to be wielded against the establishment. Academia is a gateway into the establishment, especially these Ivy League universities. Look at the list of famous alumni from Harvard, Yale, Brown, Columbia. For every quote unquote revolutionary that's emerged out of there, you can find at least 100 counter revolutionaries who you can identify by name. Like, it's the most obvious thing in the world when you think about it for 2 seconds. Again, that's not the easiest thing, I guess, for an 18-year-old to realize, when they fill out the forms.
My favorite moment for that was the 2004 presidential election when you had 2 Skull and Bones members running.
2 Skull and Bones, exactly, right. Yeah,
come on now. Right? Like, a lot of young people who go to these, very, very expensive schools that are clearly designed, that their whole purpose is to mold young, smart kids to become parts of, the elite machinery. And there's a logic to that. That's what societies do, right? They try to take their best and brightest and turn them into people who can man, the appropriate positions. But what are those institutions that they're going to? I mean, you have to be kind of blind to not see, if you're a Yale student, that they're looking for people to go work on Wall Street, to work in the defense sector if you're a science student, and then or intelligence. Like they're getting all their people from your campus. I mean, they have recruiting tables. If you don't see that, by the time you're at least a junior at one of those schools, you're making an effort not to pay attention, I think
you're exactly right, because at that point you realize, hey, this is about making a lot of money. And at that point, you also realize I'm in line to make a lot of money if I just play along. Right, exactly.
Right. And look, that's legitimate. Young people, especially now, it's tough, right? Like you're either looking at a lifetime of having 6 roommates and never even sniffing owning a house, or, you can go to door number 2 and have a job that, hey, maybe it's not so morally abhorrent that I won't be able to sleep, every single night. You will start to make those calculations, especially when the economy is as bad as it is. And I understand that, but don't lie to yourself and about what it is. And that's what's been frustrating.
Exactly.
is seeing all this self-righteousness,
right,
about things when, come on,
right. You're there to make a buck. That's what everybody goes to college for. Okay. Right.
But I think in some respects, not to play the role of the hopeful person here, but I'm gonna. In some respects, you've recreated the conditions that caused the uprisings of the 60s and 70s, because that was also very much a response to elite students realizing that the values of the machine that they were being trained to join did not match the values they were told America had. They were not raised to think, well, no, it's okay to give separate but equal accommodations. They were raised to believe America was this place that believed in equality. And then they started looking at what America actually was, and they got red-pilled. It was just the bridge between the values they had been taught to embrace and the realities of the society they lived in were just too great for them to swallow it. And it seems like you've kind of recreated that here, because you've drilled into them colonialism is the worst thing in the world. To go after marginalized non-white people is the worst thing in the world. Hey, you need to get behind Israel while it bombs the hell out of these Palestinians. It just doesn't square. It just doesn't square. And it's causing, I think, look, we'll see how it plays out. You're right. I mean, could they wind up just deciding to keep their heads down? Sure. But you know what? There is more to people than just looking for those jobs. There are core values. And if you've inculcated people with these values for years and years and years, I mean, it's just wall to wall, they've been surrounded by it. in the culture, right? You know, white privilege and elevating marginalized groups. And it's just too much cognitive dissonance to tell them now they have to get behind Israel as it commits war crimes.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, and there certainly was like a parallel thing that happened in the early '60s. You know, the free speech movement in Berkeley. There were an awful lot of kids who were realizing, hey, you know, I'm going to end up building weapons that are going to be deployed against poor Vietnamese kids. You know, I don't want to do that, right? So I think the gigantic difference, though, is that the '60s in America were a time of enormous plenty, right? And there was an awful lot of room to just sort of drop out of society and you know, make your way, right, somehow. There wasn't this like desperation.
Yeah, we had factories back then. That's true.
All right.
Right?
Yeah.
And that was very wealthy, you know. Yeah, exactly. Like, you know, the Mrs. Robinson generation, they had a lot of options, and I think that was a big factor in the decision to rebel in the way that they did. But you know, we'll see. I think. I mean, I hope you're right that this is a wake up call moment for those folks, but maybe it won't be. You know, we'll see.
It's a fair point. It's definitely easier to blow off the man when the man has 5 jobs on offer for every applicant.
Right. But this one, you're right. I mean, there's such cognitive dissonance with the way with this story that it's going to be very tough for a lot of these kids to you know, to square all the contradictory messages they've been getting. But we'll see.
Oh, and also remember, in the end, most of those kids didn't give up that prosperity. Most of them didn't go Jim Ignatowski and drive a cab. Most of them wound up back inside the system, but a system changed enough that they could tolerate it.
Well, right, and that's the Christopher Lasch, you know, his books were, you know, all about that. The sort of, you know, way people like Jerry Rubin kind of effortlessly morphed from being sort of leftist radicals to being, you know, sort of young entrepreneurial capitalists.
Right.
And you know, they went straight from being the yippies to starting up companies like Apple. And yeah, I mean that's what that generation was all about. This one I think is different, though. I think they're a little bit harder core in their politics. At least their starting place was, you know. So I'll have a harder time seeing them just sort of, you know, just move into Silicon Valley and, you know, start up death.com or whatever the next iteration of this whole system is, you know. But we'll see. Please clap.